The misunderstanding began over something so small that, weeks later, Frank would struggle to remember the exact words that had sparked it. It was a Tuesday evening. The air in their modest two-bedroom apartment in Port Harcourt hung heavy with humidity and the faint scent of stew simmering too long on the stove. Favor stood by the kitchen counter, slicing vegetables with a precision that mirrored her personality. Controlled, calculated, careful. Her navy blue bank blouse was still tucked neatly into her skirt. She had not bothered to change. Frank walked in, tired but light-hearted. He dropped his briefcase by the sofa and loosened his tie. "Baby, you won't believe the traffic today," he said, heading toward her. He leaned in for a quick peck on her cheek. She shifted slightly, not rudely, just enough that his lips brushed air instead of skin. She replied, eyes still on the cutting board. Frank paused. "Everything okay?" "Fine." It was the tone. That clipped, flat, economical tone that said, "Nothing is fine." He sighed lightly. "Favor, don't start." She stopped cutting and turned to face him. "Don't start what?" "You've been quiet since yesterday. You didn't even remember what yesterday was." Frank blinked. Then it hit him. "Your presentation at work?" She gave a short laugh that carried no humor. "Not presentation. Interview." He snapped his fingers. "Yes, the branch audit review thing. I remembered." "You remembered now." "It slipped my mind, Favor. It doesn't mean it's not important. But it is important to me." Frank rubbed his forehead. "It was a long day. Why are we turning this into something big?" She stared at him as though he had just confirmed her deepest fear, that what mattered to her did not matter enough to him. "I'm not turning it into anything," she said quietly. "You are." The conversation ended, not with shouting, but with silence. A cold, stubborn silence that slid between them like a sheet of glass. Over the next few days, Frank tried to move past it. To him, it had been a small mistake, forgetting a date, missing a detail. Marriage, he believed, was too big to fracture over such trivialities. But to Favor, it was never about the date. It was about feeling unseen. She worked hard at the bank, longer hours than she admitted, smiled at customers even when she was exhausted, competed silently with colleagues who measured worth by promotions and titles. She wanted more, not just for herself, but for their future. A bigger house, stability, children in good schools. When she told Frank about the interview for the upcoming managerial position, she had expected excitement, encouragement, a sense of shared ambition. Instead, she got forgetfulness. That night, when Frank reached for her in bed, she stiffened. "Favor," he whispered, sliding closer. "I am tired." He pulled back immediately. "Okay." He told himself it was normal. Women needed space. She was stressed. The second night, she shifted to the far edge of the bed. The third night, she pretended to sleep. Frank stopped trying. Not because he did not want her, but because rejection, even gentle rejection, has a way of bruising a man's pride. A week later, the branch manager called Favor into his office. "The regional manager will be visiting tomorrow," he announced. "He wants to review candidates for the managerial promotion." Favor's heart skipped. This was it. The next day, the regional manager arrived, Mr. Adeyemi. Tall, impeccably dressed, his presence carried authority like a tailored suit. He watched her closely during the presentation, asked pointed questions, tested her composure. She answered calmly, confidently. Afterwards, he called her aside. "You are impressive," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Thank you, sir. There's only one slot available. Competition is tight." "I understand." He smiled slowly. "I believe in rewarding loyalty, cooperation." The way he said it made something inside her tighten. "I don't understand, sir." His eyes held hers. "I'm staying at Presidential Hotel tonight, room 304. We can discuss your future properly." The room seemed smaller. Favor stood up abruptly. "Excuse me, sir." She walked out, her heels clicking too loudly against the tiled floor. That evening, she met her friend Nguzi at a cafe. "He said what?" Nguzi whispered. "You heard me." Nguzi stirred her drink thoughtfully. This isn't new, Favor. That's how things work. That's not how they are supposed to work. Supposed to. This is Nigeria. You want that position or not? Favor stared at her untouched coffee. I've worked for it. And this is the final test. It's wrong. Ngozi leant forward. Do you think the others didn't compromise? You want to stay small because of principles? Favor felt heat rise in her chest. I'm married. Ngozi shrugged. Men do worse. Your husband probably doesn't even know how cutthroat your office is. The words stung because they felt partly true. Frank didn't know. They barely talked anymore. That night, she returned home to find Frank asleep on the couch, television still on. He looked peaceful, unbothered. She stood over him for a moment. He had no idea. The following evening, she stood outside Presidential Hotel. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Adiemi, room 304. Her hands trembled. This is for your future, she told herself. For stability, for success, for respect. She told herself it would be just once. A transaction, a sacrifice, something to bury deep and never speak of again. She walked inside. She got the promotion. Within 2 weeks, an official memo announced her new role as branch manager. Colleagues congratulated her. Some smiled too widely. At home, Frank lifted her off the ground in excitement. I'm proud of you, he said. He kissed her forehead, unaware of the weight she carried. But she could not bring herself to let him touch her. Every time he came near, guilt coiled inside her stomach like a living thing. He noticed. Favor, what's going on? Nothing. You don't even look at me anymore. I'm just adjusting to the new responsibilities. He studied her carefully but said nothing more. The space between them grew. 2 months later, Favor stared at the pregnancy test in the bathroom. 2 lines. Clear. Unmistakable. Her breath stopped. She counted backward in her head. The dates, the timing. Her knees gave way, and she sat on the cold tiled floor. No. No. She had not been with Frank during that period. She had refused him over and over. Her mind raced. If the child was not Frank's, her heart pounded violently. She needed to fix this. That night, she cooked his favorite meal, laughed at his jokes, sat close to him on the couch. Frank noticed immediately. You seem different, he said carefully. I miss us, she whispered. He hesitated. She leaned in, her hand sliding across his chest. Favor, he began, conflicted. I've been unfair, she murmured. She kissed him. For a moment, he responded out of habit, out of longing. Then something inside him hardened. He pulled away. She froze. Frank? He stood up slowly. You don't get to switch me on and off whenever it suits you, he said quietly. Her chest tightened. You pushed me away for weeks, made me feel unwanted. Now suddenly. He shook his head. I'm not a tap you open when you are ready. Tears burned her eyes. I'm your wife. And I'm your husband, he replied. But that hasn't felt true for a while. He walked to the bedroom alone. Favor sat on the couch, her hand resting unconsciously on her stomach. For the first time, she understood the depth of the damage she had caused. Not just by one night at a hotel, but by silence, by pride, by secrets. In the quiet of the apartment, she realized something terrifying. The misunderstanding that started over something small had now grown into something that could destroy everything. And she was carrying a truth inside her that could either bury her marriage or finally expose it.